I recently heard an interesting theory about Margaret Thatcher, that great villain of my 80s childhood in a family that worked for the Labour Party. I haven't been able to verify it, but like all good stories, why let truth stand in the way of making a point? When Thatcher first got into power, she was still connected to normal life and people, and as such, her policies were more tempered to reflecting their concerns. But she remained in power longer and longer and on the throne, and she became ever more isolated, to the point where the only people in her life were politicians, who don't really count, and her gay hairdresser, who was very right-wing. As a side note, I'm not sure how his being homosexual is particularly relevant, but that's how it was told to me. Maybe it adds flavour. Anyway, with her hairdresser, gay or not, probably gay, becoming her only connection to day-to-day life and concerns outside of the Westminster bubble, he was her only sounding board. And whether he just reflected back what she wanted to hear or influenced her with his own politics, her policy started to get more extreme. Now, the moral of the story is, obviously, that we should only ever have bald leaders. However, we are most likely about to get a new leader, Sir Keir Starmer, and he has an enviously fine mane of hair. And my concern about him is that even at the start of his office, he's going to be disconnected with an extremely left-wing gay hairdresser, figuratively. Now, I know a couple of people who know Keir Starmer, are part of his posse, and they all say he's a very nice guy, a good person, which I'm sure is true. Rishi Sunak's probably also a nice guy, albeit one whose immense wealth serves as its own disconnect. But it's not Starmer who concerns me, per se. It's those people that I know who surround him. However you want to label them, woke, progressive, the Be Kind Brigade, the North London liberal elite, and no, they're not Jewish. When it comes to a catch-all phrase, the culture wars, they don't know what they're talking about, and they are very, very out of sync with the rest of the country. I believe they're the reason that when the silent majority finally was becoming aware of some of the issues raised by trans activism, with a double rapist, intact male sent to serve in a female jail, with the fairness of women's sports being compromised, with basic scientific truth under threat, Keir Starmer was still making ridiculous statements like 99% of women don't have a penis. Even then, even when some basic reading and research into these issues would blow apart the incoherent arguments of trans activists and the valid concerns of women, he still didn't get it. And then this week, Starmer gave this speech.
In its desperation to cling on to power at all cost, the Tory party is undertaking a kind of weird McCarthyism, trying to find woke agendas in the very civic institutions they once regarded with respect. Let me tell you, waging a war on the proud spirit of service in this country isn't leadership. It's desperate, it's divisive, it's damaging.
Now, apart from that all being a bit of a waffle, and frankly massively hypocritical, it's evidence that either because of his advisers or his friends, Keir Starmer still doesn't get it. Yes, the economy is more important, and health, education, crime, national security. But let's not pretend that the madness we've seen take over our institutions these last years, that have permeated and arguably had negative impacts on our economy, health, education, crime, national security, don't matter. Critical race theory, trans activism, decolonisation, corporate wokeism, authoritarianism, BLM, cancel culture, diversity, equality, all disseminated and adopted under the best of intentions. Yet very few people in power remember, under a Tory government, bothered to read the small print. And the thing is, these concerns about our freedoms and fairness and increased intolerance under the guise of tolerance are outside traditional left and right politics. Yes, of course, there are those on both sides of the political aisle and their respective champions in the media, including some on this channel, who utilise them as a means to make political points against the other side. But that doesn't invalidate the initial point. When the Tories bashed Corbyn's Labour for anti-Semitism, that wasn't in itself evidence that anti-Semitism didn't exist. Personally, I think Starmer's been pretty solid on anti-Semitism. From how toxic the party was, it's been an incredible turnaround these last few years. Yet even though Corbyn may be gone, there's still many of his ilk, too many, more obsessed with the regional conflict 3,000 miles away than their own constituencies. Just yesterday, with Holocaust Memorial Day, Labour MP Kate Osamor took the disgraceful action when writing to her constituents of adding Gaza to the list of genocides, an insult to those, particularly the 6 million Jews who were murdered in an actual genocides. She and a bunch of Labour MPs should be nowhere near the party, nowhere close to the levers of power. At least now, though, they are in the minority, and at least Starmer seems to have them somewhat under control. But still, being unable to trust all elements within the party, that makes his role as leader that much more vital. So, what about Starmer himself? There's a lot I like about him. I like that he wasn't handed everything on a plate like I was. I like that he got to the top of his profession through hard work and determination. I like his moral stance on many issues. I like that the far left hate him with a passion, which shows he's doing something right. I like that he's got the Labour Party to a place where it can win, and I like the possibility, maybe naively, that they could make this country better, or at least not any worse. That's what I think most people want, for this country to be better and a bit fairer for everybody. And I want to be able to vote for Labour to make that happen. I couldn't in the last few elections for obvious reasons, but I voted for them before, always. And then things happen, like Rosie Duffield being bullied, and she doesn't get any protection from the leadership at all. Then stupid speeches like this week happen, and we're back to square one. Because there are people rightly scared of what a Labour Party could do if in power. What taking the knee means when a few years later the Black Lives Matter organisation is found to be rife with corruption and posts in support and celebrates the actions of terrorists who mass raped and murdered their way through a music festival. What pushing for more stringent lockdowns means for long-term educational prospects of our children. And the answer is we don't know. Now, in my world of board games I play at home, what Starmer has been doing is called turtling. He's hunkering down, gathering his resources, letting everyone else fight it out to win it all in a clean sweep at the end. It's a valid strategy. But who exactly is going to emerge at the end? Because this week's speech, as he poked himself out of that shell, is not inspiring. So if I may be so bold to offer some advice to Keir Starmer, and I'm not saying to listen to me, I'm just a stand-up comic who tells knob gags. But please, stop listening to those around you and start doing your own reading. Read Helen Joyce's Trans. Read Hannah Barnes' Time to Think. Read Andrew Doyle's The New Puritans. Maybe you won't agree with what you read, but at least you'll be better informed and at least you'll make up your own mind. At least when you give speeches on such matters, you'll speak with conviction rather than sound like someone trying to hedge their bets. Otherwise, someone else like Kemi Badenoch, someone who knows her stuff, who speaks clearly in a way that the majority of this country understand and agree with, will destroy you. Because make no mistake, there is a culture war going on. And if you continue on this path, you will lose it. And then we'll all lose. And just to be safe, maybe also get a new hairdresser and with a little colour tinge.